Hello everyone, welcome to Cogs Community Rotary Halifax Harbour. My name is Thomas Paul and we're continuing our month of August celebrating membership and new club development, and we're doing that by exploring both some of the membership challenges and some of the opportunities and success through both this podcast and also through our social media. We're sharing and resharing a lot of content, so if you don't follow us on social media, you can find us by searching Rotary Halifax Harbour. And this podcast is a video version. So if you're listening to us, would rather watch us, you can find us on our YouTube channel, or on the Spotify app. And if you're watching us but rather listen to us only, maybe you're driving, you can find us on your favorite podcast app. Now, obviously, we're really excited to welcome Louisa Horne, who is a member of our club, bit of a membership guru, a lot of Rotary guru in general. So we're going to have a lot to talk about. We may stray off into some the realms of Rotary, but we'll try to kind of keep it practical for our membership talk today. And we're going to look at the current trends of what's happening in Rotary now, but also opportunities and success for the future. Now, this is a two-part podcast. This is part one, where we're going to talk about our current situation and kind of the risks of not doing anything with membership. Part two, which is immediately after this one, we're going to release them at the same time, is more the fun part, where we talk about the exciting things that are happening in Rotary, the opportunities within Rotary, and things of that nature. So I think, Louisa, I think I know you fairly well, but why don't you give us a bit of your Rotary story, your Rotary story.
My Rotary story. Oh, well, I love my Rotary story because it started with youth exchange. My younger daughter was selected by Halifax Harborside at the time, to be a youth exchange student. This is quite a while ago, about 17 maybe years ago now, that she was selected, and off she went to have a fantastic experience for a year in Germany. And of course, I visited the club with her, and off she went, and I stayed. And I've been loving it ever since, having lots of opportunities to get involved at the club level. And then, as happens, you then have opportunities at the district level, and then at the zone level, and they're all interesting. And so it's been a great journey.
Yeah, that's it. And so that literally was the first kind of
That was it.
delve into Rotary. Wow,
that was it. A friend of mine who is a Rotarian in the Valley had talked to my daughter about youth exchange, and that got her interested. She wanted to go when she was 12, I think, and then she had to wait, and so she went after high school, and then I connected and continued on.
I mean, I never thought of it this way, but I mean, attracting new members through their children might be a way to think.
Worked on me. It worked for me.
So just to give some context here, so we're in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is in District 7815, make sure I get my number right, which is Zone 28, which is a massively huge geographic area, which basically encompasses most of Canada, with a very small portion, some northern U.S. states, and Alaska, I believe.
Yes, some of Alaska.
St. Pierre-Miquelon, which is a French island off the coast of Newfoundland.
3 countries.
Yeah, very, very neat. But obviously, when we talk about Rotary membership, maybe you can give us a snapshot of if someone said, how's Rotary doing? What would you say?
Good question. Well, Rotary, like many other membership organizations and groups that are involved in service or volunteer work or civic responsibility work, are experiencing similar things in North America, and that is they've had declines over the last couple of decades. And so Rotary is no different than other service groups, or maybe volunteer firefighters, or volunteers at the art gallery. It's become more challenging for people to commit the time to regular volunteering. And there are 2 aspects of that. There's the actual organization itself and what it does to be irresistible to people who you might like to attract. And then there's external factors, and they both have an impact on what we're seeing today, particularly in North America.
So North America particularly, but are there some areas in the world, you know, that are a little bit better than others?
We have seen some success in some parts of the world. Certainly in Asia, for example, we've seen considerable growth over the last little while, and that has continued. And even there are pockets within North America where we've seen some growth as well. But in general, North America, New Zealand, Australia, Great Britain, we have tended to see declines over the last couple of decades, and that has continued this past year. So we've started this new Rotary year, July 1st, and numbers globally are a little bit down, and numbers in North America certainly are down a bit.
Okay. And is this a bit of a sudden shock, or is this a slow trickle
Hmm.
or a bit of both?
I'd say it's a bit of a slow trickle that it's
Yeah.
been happening in North America since the mid 90s, that we have seen this steady kind of slope on the line of the graph. And it hasn't changed very much over those years.
Yeah.
And, as I said, there are pockets where we are seeing some successes. So I'm happy that we're going to talk about that a little bit too. But in general, the combination of both internal and external influences are making it more challenging for traditional clubs, especially,
Yeah.
but also for other organizations that would have had similar models, whether it's the art gallery or the firefighters,
Yeah.
where they're looking for people to commit a significant amount of time on a regular basis over a long period of time, and that just doesn't seem to fit as well for a lot of people.
And from a leadership perspective or a strategy perspective, I would think that trickle can sometimes be insidious.
It is, especially for clubs that in the past have been quite large, and
Yeah.
we've seen that. We've seen that in our own city and
Yeah.
many others, where some of the earliest clubs have in the past been 100 or 200 members, perhaps,
Yeah.
or more in some parts of the country. And over time, you think, oh, well, we've lost one or two. Oh, we lost two or three. That's okay. We're still fine. Three or four people left, but we brought two in. We've got a couple more coming. And so you don't really notice a big shock. And it is that gradual decline that all
Yeah.
of a sudden that club that was once 100 is now 30. And then it's 20. And
Yeah.
then it gets to the point where it's really difficult to be sustainable.
So why is it so important that we even take stock of our situation and trajectory?
Oh,
I hesitate to say this, but like our membership trends aren't great.
no, they're not. Well, I guess you could use one of the old lines of, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. Right? It's not
Yeah.
going to change. If you don't change something, nothing will happen differently, right? It sounds kind of trite, but that's the reality. And I think it's only recently that we've really been saying that out loud,
Yeah.
and some of our senior leaders are saying it out loud, that we are in a crisis situation
Okay.
of membership in North America. We've heard our general secretary use that term recently, and that's fairly new to be ready to say, okay, we can't hide behind this anymore.
Yeah.
We can't pretend and have our heads in the sand. We have to face it and do some things differently. And certainly Rotary has started over the last few years to do some things differently, whether it's changes at the council of legislation level or changes at some of the processes and how we organize clubs and flexibility and so on. Those things have changed,
Yeah.
but there's more that needs to happen.
Yeah. And I think it's good that someone says crisis
Yeah.
or critical.
Yeah,
And I think it's good to acknowledge that, because if we don't acknowledge that, there's no chance of us
absolutely
looking
not.
for a solution. And how do we tie, like, when I think about a club of 100 versus a club of 30 or shrinking, um, what does that do to Rotary?
What does it do? Well, we know that the data tell us that clubs that have been declining, unless they make significant change, will likely continue to decline. And clubs that are vibrant and very active and have experienced some growth will likely continue on that same track if their leadership continues to be strong.
Right.
And similarly, the one that's declining will continue to decline unless there's a significant shift in how leadership happens. There's a lot of link to the leadership of the club. But the trends tend to go in the same way, right?
Mhm.
So a successful club keeps going, a declining club keeps going that way. So what does it mean when we look at the clubs in a district or a zone? My interest is at the zone level now as the coordinator looking at membership. We can look at the history of every club in every district and see which ones have experienced decline over the last 5 years, say. They're probably going to keep going. Which ones have done well, steady growth, they have more potential. Where should we put our focus? Where should we really make opportunities available to people to look at their membership? So what does it mean for Rotary? It means that those trends will likely continue unless those clubs are motivated and have the leadership to do things really quite differently.
Do you think leadership really is the first key
Absolutely.
to success in this?
Definitely.
And so we're not suggesting that there's a lack of desire
No.
for change. But I guess what we're seeing is basically repeating what we've always done isn't necessarily working.
Keep doing what you've always done.
Right.
Mm,
So leadership, when you say leadership, it's leadership in to say we need to try something different, or we
exactly.
need to try a different approach.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And that's not easy, right? Because people have been around for a while.
Hmm.
Sometimes there are people in clubs that have been there a really long time
Yeah.
and they love their club.
Yeah.
They love what their club was even
Yeah.
more. And sometimes there's this view that, well, we just have to get back to
Yeah.
where we were.
Yeah.
And that's not very realistic because it's just not, that's not what we're seeing happen.
I mean, that's a great question because I think about the things in Rotary that I enjoy a lot, that I'm less interested in, but it's the whole package.
Sure.
It certainly isn't changed my desire to be part of Rotary or not part of Rotary. But how do you explain to someone who says something I really value in Rotary is no longer of value to new members?
Mm.
And I see it being declined. And I don't want to pin it onto one particular item because every club I think is unique and different. But how do we tell people that how do you explain it to people?
Well, I think part of it is involving people in the tough conversations for starters, and the tough conversations involve looking in the mirror. Where are we now? What is our trajectory? What's going to happen if we keep doing everything the same as we've been doing it for the last few years? What are the opportunities for change? And how can we keep the some of the traditions, perhaps some of the rituals that people might really value? How can we find ways to keep those parts and at the same time have some new things that will attract new people? And does that mean starting a satellite? Does that mean having a smaller group that meets at a different time in a different place on a different day? How do we make those things happen so that the folks that have enjoyed some of the traditional pieces for a long time still can maintain that
Yeah.
and do some other things as well? And if they're part of that conversation and part of the looking in the mirror and part of the strategic thinking around, okay, let's be honest here, if we keep on this same trend, here's what it looks like next year, here's what it looks like 5 years out, everybody's probably going to say, well, that's not where we want to be, we need to do
Right.
something differently. Okay, let's work together and figure that out.
So let's say we have a leadership within the club that and there's a desire within the club to make some change. They're exploring opportunities. Let's say we get everyone on board to the idea that some things are going to change a little bit. Is there anything else you think that's holding clubs back other than that historic kind of desire to maintain traditional kind of what we consider the stereotypical Rotary club?
Well, the holding back part is that, at the end of the day, people don't generally embrace change. Some
Yeah.
people do,
Yeah.
but most people don't want their world rocked. And so they like things the way they are. So it's not necessarily easy.
Yeah.
And not everybody is going to be prepared to make the shift if there's a shift required.
Yeah.
And so you have to go into that with your eyes open to say, this is not going to be, a piece of cake to make this all happen. We're going to have to work hard together, and that leadership needs to be in place to help people work through the change management that's required.
Yeah.
You can't just say we're going to change this, and okay, next week it's all going to happen.
Right.
No, there's steps to take in making sure that that is done in a way that everybody can come with you. Can't get too far ahead, right? It's very easy with great leadership even to get a little too far ahead of everybody that you're leading. They need to come with you.
Yeah. And I've heard kind of the phrase "everything's on the table."
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just an off-the-cuff term or if that's something that's kind of been coming around on the Rotary circles, but I think it might be interesting to recognize what's not changing.
Mm.
And when I think about things that aren't changing, is our core mission as Rotary isn't changing, right? We're still an organization of service. We're still an organization that wants to make a difference in the world.
Right.
It's just how we do it.
Right. No, that vision around coming together to make an impact, have a lasting change in the world, whether it's across the globe, in our communities, in ourselves. That's part of the vision statement. And we do that with a few foundational things. We have the 4-way test, we have our avenues of service, we have our areas of focus, we have, those are what are our strong foundation. There's no thought of those needing to change.
Yeah.
Or anybody wanting to change them.
Yeah.
What changes is how you live that. How do you be Rotary, given that that's your foundation, when you have more flexibility around some of the more I'll say some of the more tangible structural things like meeting times and meals and how you're structured and the kinds of projects you do and how you set up things with from a flexibility perspective. Those are all on the table for sure.
Right.
The foundation is not.
So when I think about those core values and those core mission that Rotary is, and I think about all the things that I stereotypically think about a Rotary Club, including the things that we do in our own Rotary Club, I sometimes reflect and to say what we do at our particular club isn't 100% what Rotary is. We're stewards of the mission, and that if we want that mission, those values to extend into the future, we have to accept the way we do things might have to change slightly.
Well, I would suggest that what we do is absolutely Rotary
Right.
in terms of working within that framework of the foundation of the vision and the principles and the various avenues and areas of focus and so on. We are certainly operating within that and being somewhat flexible. There's probably more we could do within that. But as we look forward to the future and think about our community and how we have that lasting change in whatever community we want to be impactful in, locally, globally, ourselves, how we do that has lots of possibility.
Right. Seeing what we've seen since the 90s, seeing what's going on today, how do you think this is going to play out? Do you think that we are at the peak and that it's going to slowly get better, or do you think we still got a little bit of pain to endure first, or?
Tough question. Again, I'm a creature of data, and when I look at the data and I see a graph that has been going in one direction for several decades, it's hard to imagine that that's suddenly going to bottom out and go up the other way. I mean, I'd love that if anybody could wave a magic wand, our year of magic. We don't have magic wands. If we did and could somehow shift that, that would be lovely. I don't think that's going to happen. Again, I think it's internal and external factors that are influencing this, but I think we're seeing sparks in various places of things that are having an impact and ways that people are finding opportunities to do things differently and have success. And I think that will continue. And I think that as zones and districts have more conversations about that, and people like you and others start to think differently and ask questions and say, what if we did this? Well, can we try that? How about this? I think we have more openness for those conversations to happen than we've had in the past. And so that gives me hope.
Very good. And you mentioned data, and I'm a huge fan of data as well. So it's very easy to measure people within your club. Okay, you have X number of members this year, you have X number of members next year. But there are other points of data that we use is there other points of data that we measure to measure the value of membership and its impact, or?
Impact is always a challenge to measure, but there are many ways to look at it, and clubs do. They look at hours of service and number of people involved in projects and dollars raised and contributions made and number of people helped, whatever. There's lots of ways to look at that. The numbers that I look at a lot from a membership perspective are percentages around attraction of people that are being attracted to a club, and the attrition, the opposite of attraction, the people that are leaving. Because you could have a club that thinks it's doing just marvelously well because they've brought in, 8 people this year. And that does sound lovely. But if they lost 10, it's not so lovely.
Yeah.
Right? So we know that just on a normal basis, just because of life happens, that people move away or their life circumstances change and they drop off the list, there's going to be 14-15% on average in any given club that are likely going to disappear over the next year or so. So that means whatever that number is for a given club, it may be lower, it may be higher, that's an average. We need to attract more than that if we're going to grow. And so sometimes I don't think clubs really look at some of those numbers or look at the trends. The numbers are all available to us, and leaders of clubs can all see those numbers and know exactly what their club has done for the last X number of years and see what the trend is and know that their job is to either help turn that trend upward, or if it is an upward trend, to do what they can to keep it going that way.
Fantastic. Okay. So pretty sober.
I would say it's not a rosy picture, but there's lots of opportunity for hope and optimism.
And that's what we're going to get onto next. So this is, I think we're going to wrap part one of two parts. This is the look at what Rotary looks at right now. And I'd say there's a lot more exciting, more fun things to talk about next. This was the Band-Aid.
Okay.
The Band-Aid. So now we're gonna kind of go on. And so this is the end of part one. So all you have to do is just keep listening. So part two is coming right after. Like I said at the beginning, if you don't already follow us on social media, just search Rotary Halifax Harbour. The podcast is called Cogs of Community. You can search that on your favorite podcast app. And just keep listening, and we'll be back very shortly with our next part.